Welcome to the Kapital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is September 12th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast is Then There Was 10. Then There Was 10. Of course, we're talking about the Democratic Party's nominees, candidates for the presidency. We're going to talk about that, but first we're going to get to some market news because there were some stories that came out. We obviously had the ECB make a move, the European Central Bank cuts the deposit facility rate and restarts bond buying, i.e. quantitative easing. The ECB slashed the deposit interest rate by 10 basis points and approved a new round of bond purchases at a monthly pace of 20 billion euros, starting from November 1st. The move came in as an attempt to boost both growth and inflation amid global trade tensions and Brexit uncertainty. The bank also lowered their inflation and growth forecasts. This is no surprise. We were telling you that we were anticipating that the ECB was going to cut interest rates even deeper into negative territory and that they were likely going to announce at a minimum that they were going to start another round of quantitative easing. The simple question was, when? When were they going to start it? Well, they're going to start it on November 1st. And to what degree? 20 billion euros a month. They will continue buying government bonds, and it's quite possible that they might even start at some point buying corporate bonds as well. So this is going to be another bailout of governments and corporations. At the same time, this is supposed to serve as a stimulus package. Yet what happened during their conference? What else did they say? That they are lowering both their forecast for inflation and GDP growth. Well, how can this be? You're going to stimulate the economy. That's supposed to drive up inflation. That's supposed to drive up GDP growth. What are they saying? Are they admitting defeat at the same time, but saying, well, hell, we don't know what else to do, so we're just going to print more money. We're just going to go deeper into negative territory. I mean, you have to understand, folks, that the ECB, they ended their QE program about 9 months ago. All right. Now already they are back to it. They're already back to it. I mean, it's only a matter of time before the United States is back to it here as well. Don't forget, Thunder Thumbs is talking about going back to zero. And why not go to negative territory? Because everything would be great. Because then we would be like Europe, going into recession. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But that's what the ECB did today. And again, the timing of it, November 1st is the start of it. Well, the current president, Mario Draghi of the ECB, he will be gone. He's done, like I've said, at the end of October on Halloween Day, which is the same hard deadline for Brexit. Okay? We are likely going to have the former IMF managing director, Christine Lagarde, come in as the new president. She has already praised negative interest rates. So we're likely going to remain in this negative territory for quite a while in Europe. Despite the protests from major banking CEOs and CFOs throughout Europe saying this is not good, we cannot make any money, which they haven't been making money for years. It's a completely different system over there, folks, in Europe as compared to the United States. Different sectors. Now, of course, there's interconnectedness between them, but U.S. banks are better capitalized and are making some profits as opposed to these European banks. And even now, we're starting to see some deterioration with Japanese banks as well. Now, this doesn't mean that U.S. banks are safe by any measure, but I do believe that they are stronger than their European and Japanese counterparts. But, you know what hits the fan. That I don't think anybody's really going to be safe at the end of the day. But that's what the ECB did as anticipated. You also had Donald Trump come out and make a statement, of course, on Twitter saying that the ECB, they get it. They get it. They understand what's going on here. They're trying to decrease the value of the euro against the strong, mighty U.S. dollar. They get it. They're trying to help out their countries. They're trying to help out their industries, their export markets, and all that jazz. I mean, what does the president not understand? That the reason that they are doing negative interest rates while they're going back to quantitative easing is because they are headed for recession, that they are slowing down. Why the president can't connect these dots is beyond me, unless he wants lower interest rates to benefit the Trump organization, which is heavily indebted, as are most big real estate companies. I mean, so that's no surprise. So Is he just simply trying to talk up his own book here? I mean, when he was a candidate, the Fed was the enemy from the standpoint of hurting Americans, creating bubbles in the stock market, creating bubbles and malinvestment throughout the economy. Now he's president. He now wants lower interest rates. Again, this is something I cannot stand for and I cannot tolerate. So is he simply talking up his own book and trying to get his own personal loans to cost to cost less in interest payments? I hope that's not the case, but that's what it appears to be. We have some news here on the U.S. front. The national deficit has hit $1 trillion. Well, this is no surprise to you who have been the audience of the Capital News for quite a while. We've been predicting this for months now, that this was going to be another year where we have $1 trillion deficit. Officially. This is official. Okay. $1 trillion through the first 11 months of the fiscal year. The fiscal year will end this month at the end of September, and then we'll start anew in October. That's the current fiscal year. I don't even know what to say. I mean, where are my fiscal conservatives? Where are the Republicans in the House, in the Senate? Where's the Tea Party? Where are any of these people? They're silent, and their silence is deafening. Are trillion-dollar deficits draining the swamp? I don't think so. I mean, this is what you get when you have a president who says, yeah, we got to make a deal with the Democrats, and it's going to be a great thing to raise the debt ceiling, which ensures trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. Well, here we have one right now already. Trillion-dollar deficits. We have not had an official trillion-dollar deficit since 2012, 7 years ago, when we were coming out of the Great Recession, one of the worst financial crises the world has ever seen. So while I'm not for those deficits then, but it's at least a little bit more understandable, we were coming out of a terrible economic and financial situation. What about now? We're told we are in the midst of the greatest U.S. economy ever, which, of course, I don't buy that line, and we go through the data points here on a daily basis. We have video presentations. Make sure you're checking those out on thecapitalnews.com and on our YouTube channel at The Capital News, because they're posted there. I want you to see what it is that I'm looking at. I want you to also put this economic puzzle together, piece by piece, layer by layer. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. That's what this is all about. I don't pretend to have all of the answers and to know everything. I don't know everything. I will never pretend to know everything. But when I look at these things and I understand the business cycle, and I look at the economic data points that we talk about here on a daily basis, things are rolling over. Things are rolling over. We are in the midst of the longest expansion in the business cycle that we have ever experienced in the United States since we've been keeping records, and that goes back a long time. We're running out of steam. This is what happens. But to have trillion-dollar deficits at the end of a business cycle, not actually in recession, what happens when we're in recession? 1.5 trillion? 2? 2.5? 3? Do I have 4? Lady in the back? 5 trillion? I mean, how in the red are we going to go? We're already at $23 trillion in a national debt, and that keeps going up. And then we have the Democrats debating this evening, and nobody even says a thing about it. Who cares? Just keep printing money. Just keep taxing the rich. There's no serious discussion on this whatsoever. Other news on the domestic front. We have inflation, CPI, Consumer Price Index, hitting 2.4%, which is the highest in 11 years. Of course, we're told there's no inflation, but that's the highest in 11 years. We have the core PCE, which is what the Federal Reserve prefers to look at. It strips out some volatile items, is at 1.6%. Now, the Federal Reserve is looking for 2%, so by their favored metric, the core PCE, they're at 1.6%, so they're slightly below it still, but you have 2.4%, which is the highest in 11 years. So let's get this straight as a recap. And again, we talk about this all the time because we have to, because this affects financial markets. This affects our consumer behavior. We have the Federal Reserve set to meet next week to make a decision on monetary policy and what they're going to do with interest rates. We anticipate that they're probably going to cut interest rates by at least 25 basis points. But you have the S&P, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ nearing all-time highs. We have the unemployment rate at 3.7%, which is at a near 50-year low. And we have inflation that is starting to tick up and get closer to the Federal Reserve's goal. Now, the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate: full employment and stable prices. And now they sort of deviated from the stable prices, and now they do inflation targeting. And like I said, they pull out 2%. It's an arbitrary number. This is a slow burn. This is a slow boil. That's how they play this. Well, the American people, they can tolerate, 2% theft of their purchasing power every year. That's what they're going to tolerate. That's what we're going to target. They've achieved both of these things. They're near 2%. And if they want price stability, lower than 2% is even more stable. And they have unemployment at a 50-year low. And stock markets, indices at all-time highs or near them. So why does the Federal Reserve have to cut interest rates? And now we have possibly a trade truce coming up between the United States and China. This was the main talking point for Chairman Jay Powell of the Federal Reserve, saying why they cut interest rates back at the end of July by 25 basis points. Because of the uncertainties around the trade war and the escalation and the business uncertainty, the feedback that they get from all of their surveys and the discussions that they have with various business leaders and communities throughout the reserve banks. So what's the justification now? Everything seems to be perfect. And now you even had Donald Trump coming out and saying, well, I might even agree to a temporary trade deal. Now, that's not ideal, but I might do it. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Yesterday, he was tweeting out there again that China, he says, I am expecting China to purchase more agricultural products. Really? Isn't that what we've been told for the past 18 months? I had to tweet him back. I felt compelled to do it. He said, I expect the Chinese to buy more agricultural products. And I tweeted back something in the effect of, and I expect you to keep tweeting this nonsense for another 18 months for further market manipulation. I mean, come on. When are you going to wake up? I'm tired of being pulled around all over the place. And then all you see, no deal. A truce was temporary. It barely lasted a month. And now there's further escalation. So you can't make this stuff up, folks, but that's the world in which we live. Now, the S&P gained 9 points today. The Dow was up 45. The NASDAQ gained 25 points. The Russell 2000, despite it being on a strong rally over the past few days, has pulled back and just lost only 65 cents for the day. The Dow Jones Transports, which was also rallying over the past few days, pulled back and lost 0.4%. And the New York Stock Exchange gained 0.3%. Now, despite the fact that you have the ECB doing what markets wanted to some degree, cutting interest rates even further into negative territory, promising more quantitative easing, as far as the eye can see, I guess you could call them positive headlines surrounding U.S.-China trade talks. The anticipation that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to cut interest rates. And the markets were barely up today. You get what I'm saying? We have all of these people and institutions coming out trying to push these markets higher, no matter what the cost, to manipulate everything. And the markets really, they barely moved today. Is this thing running out of steam? Diminishing marginal returns kicking in? What's going on? Or is this just a breather to some bigger breakout? We're going to find out. We have oil pulled back slightly from yesterday's podcast. We have WTI trading at $54.80. And we have Brent, the international metric, at $60 a barrel. Gold, $1,497 an ounce. Silver is trading at $18.06 at the time of this podcast. Again, I still believe that the precious metals are in the early innings of a bull market. And there has been some resiliency, despite the fact that we have seen a rotation out of safe haven, quote-unquote safe haven, treasury bonds and bills and notes. Gold and silver have pretty much remained pretty stable. Now, they have pulled back. Nothing goes straight up. Nothing goes straight down. So this is somewhat of a minor correction, and any type of pullback, to me, is an opportunity to get in. We have Uncle Sam's U.S. 10-year Treasury note up an additional 3% today and is now yielding 1.79%. 1.79%. Only a couple weeks ago, we were at 1.48, I think maybe even a low of 1.42. So this is quite the rally in yields. Is this going to be sustainable? And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine this afternoon saying, something's up here, something's fishy. And we know this. Maybe this is part of the decoupling that we've been discussing here for quite a while, and this is simply what we're in the midst of. But for years, we saw the stock market rally when yields came down. Now, for the past week and a half, yields have been going up, and stock prices have also been going up. We're almost at all-time highs. So is this a decoupling, or is this a head fake? And a lot of people are going to be surprised either in the stock market or in the bond market. Got to stay tuned, folks. I mean, it's getting rather interesting because this is not what we've been seeing over the past 10 years. Something is going to correct. Something is going to revert to the mean. Is it going to be the stock market or is it going to be the bond market? Because we had this conversation not too long ago either, and something's amiss. There's a lot of divergences. There's decoupling. Is the bond market right? Is the stock market right? Or is the internals of the stock market right? Some things are pointing higher, some things are pointing lower. They both can't be right. So who's going to win out at the end of the day? That's why one day does not make a trend. That's why we got to stay on top of everything. We also have the VIX, the volatility index, losing another 3 percentage points today and is now trading at $14.22. So that's the market news. Now to the lunatic fringe on the left. Now there are 10 on the stage. Some members are still running. They just did not meet the DNC's qualification criteria to make it on the stage this evening in Houston. Now, I do imagine the next debate, this might dwindle down to even fewer. I'm not up to speed on all of the rules with the DNC. I really don't care to know. That's their party. It's their rules. What they do is what they do. I'm not going to have any type of influence, nor do I want to have any influence over what they do. So we're just going to play that by ear as to how many members, how many contenders are going to be on the stage during the next debate. But there were 10 this evening. And I know I didn't talk about it when she dropped out a few weeks ago already, but Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, thank God she's out of the race. Can't stand that woman. Don't want to look at her. Don't want to hear her. She's gone. Sayonara. See you later. Who was not on the stage, and I'm disappointed in this, and I mean this, I'm disappointed that she was not on the stage this evening, and that is Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. Not saying that I would vote for this woman, but she deserves to be on that stage as far as I'm concerned. She is a different type of candidate. She resonates with people across party lines, with the libertarian side of things, especially in regards to her stance on foreign policy and ending these endless wars and all that stuff. And that resonates with me. I don't agree with a whole host of her social issues, and I don't agree with a whole host of her economic issues, but I believe she deserves to be on the stage. She deserves to be heard. The DNC has not been fully transparent as to their selection criteria as to who is going to make it to these debates. They're sort of willy-nilly picking what polls they're going to use, because I do know Tulsi Gabbard has, not the best poll numbers, but enough to have been on the stage this evening, but she did, I guess, not qualify given the DNC's parameters and the polls that they were picking. So again, a little bit of a lack of transparency. This is what you get with the two-party system. This is sort of par for the course for the DNC. A lot of people probably still feel that they were underhanded when it came to Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, and they pretty much, gave Bernie Sanders the old heave-ho. So it's just par for the course for these for national politics. But I do think it's a shame that Tulsi Gabbard was not on the stage. But who knows? Maybe she'll get on the next debate. We'll see what happens. But for the 10 that were on the stage this evening, the main focus was on the frontrunner right now, former Vice President Joe Biden, crazy Bernie Sanders, Pocahontas, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Kamala Harris is still fighting on the fringe. Mayor Pete Buttigieg still fighting on the fringe. And then some others. But I think those were the main contenders in this evening's debate. Kamala Harris, I know I've said in previous podcasts that I thought she was going to be a stronger candidate because I see the woman as being ruthless, and I think that being ruthless will get you far in politics, not just in today's politics, but any era of politics. And I think she fits the bill for being ruthless. However, she doesn't have really a strong, consistent message, and so she's sort of floundering around up there. But I think the way that she attempted to differentiate herself this evening was she was probably the strongest candidate on the stage to attack President Donald J. Trump. Now, of course, there were a couple jabs from the other candidates, but she was pretty much honed in on going after him. I don't know if she's trying to do this for publicity, to get the attention of Donald Trump. That way he starts tweeting about her, and then if, any publicity is good publicity, right? So she's just sort of taking that avenue and hoping that Donald Trump starts tweeting about her or making comments about her to the press. As far as I know, she's one of only a few of the candidates who does not have a nickname from Donald Trump. And I'm actually looking forward to what he nicknames her, because he is pretty good at this. Not that it's the best thing for the national discussion and civility that I'm calling for, but he is pretty good at giving these people nicknames. They tend to stick, and they're usually pretty humorous as well. So Kamala Harris, she needs to get her act together with a better messaging platform to make it through. Otherwise, I think she's going to start falling by the wayside. I got to give credit where credit is due. Bernie Sanders, the man can debate. The man can stay. He's quick on his feet. He was under attack, primarily centered around his Medicare for All plan surrounding health care, which was a heated debate amongst the 10 candidates for probably a good 45 minutes to an hour. This was a 3-hour debate, 8 to 11. 3 hours of my life I'm not going to get back. But it was some interesting TV here and there. The conversation around healthcare is ridiculous. No understanding of free market principles, no understanding of the profit motive that ends up driving costs lower. Now, of course, we have a hybrid system that is part private and part government. And with the bureaucratic mess that we have, all this does is just jacks up the prices all over the place. I mean, we talk about this in our book, The Cynic's Guide to Investing. You look at when the government started to get involved heavily in health insurance markets, in medical markets, and you have nothing but price inflation. I mean, it's exponential. You can't make it up. It's ridiculous. Nobody wants to take a second to look at the data because it's not that hard to look at, and it's the government's own data. So this isn't some right-wing anti-government group where you find this data. Nope, this is the government's data as to what has happened to the price of health care, health insurance, prescription drug costs, you name it, the government has the statistics, and it's not pretty. And then they're scratching their heads. Well, how can this be? Why is this happening? It couldn't be because of the government. No, it's exactly because of the government. Is there corruption in the private sector? You better believe it. But they're joined at the hip with the government. So I don't get these arguments from these Democrats who just, rail against the corruption that exists between big business and big government, but they just talk about the big corporation side of it, the big business side of it, not the big government. In fact, they think bigger government is the solution, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. But Bernie Sanders can hold his own. His message resonates with a lot of people because a lot of people believe this. They shouldn't, but they believe it. This is why Bernie Sanders will continue to hold his own. He could be he could be the nominee. Who knows? I also have to give credit where credit is due. And Elizabeth Warren. She has also proven to be better on the debate stage than I had anticipated. She holds her own. If she's under attack, she has good comebacks. She receives quite a bit of applause lines in the past few debates. So her message is resonating with voters. Now, I think she would be decimated by Donald Trump. I don't think she could hold her own against Donald Trump. Bernie could, I think. Joe Biden, this guy is all over the place. He's all over the place. He was under attack today because he's the front runner, and now it's starting to narrow down, so you expect this. People are you swing up. So they were going for the front runner, and that's Vice President Joe Biden. He can hold his own, too. He's been a statesman. He's been a politician for, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. He knows how to take the heat. He knows how to throw a punch or two, and he did. But then some of his answers, he's crazy. He's mumbling. He's rambling. He's all over the place. They're talking about some of his comments in reparations and all this stuff. And he has us in Venezuela, in Latin America. I mean, he's all over the place. I mean, I understand that some of these politicians are going to answer the question directly and they're going to try to pivot. But how do you end up from talking about reparations, which is ridiculous, but this is what they're talking about, reparations for slavery, and then you end up in Venezuela, in Latin America? I mean, I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't want to know, because if I knew, then that means I would be inside Joe Biden's head, and I don't want to be there. But that was pretty much the debate. It was centered around healthcare. You have the fanaticism with the gun control and all of this stuff. Of course, we've had many conversations on gun control. I hope to have another article posted to the Capital News about that, which it's going to be pretty much centered around a false sense of security, because that was a little bit of a debate, too, that took some time. This was in Houston, and, of course, there was the shooting, the mass shooting that took place in El Paso only, a handful of weeks ago. So that's still fresh in people's minds. You have former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. This is now sort of his signature theme. He received thunderous applause talking about banning assault rifles, and if he was president, he would demand and mandatory buybacks, and he's going to go confiscate all of the AR-15s and any type of military-stylized weapon is going to be out of the hands of the average American, and the government is just going to confiscate all of them. That received, again, thunderous applause. It's a bunch of nonsense, but that's half the country. A lot of people believe this. It is a false sense of security. You have, Cory Booker talking about a license. If you need a license to drive a car, you need a license to buy a gun. You want to talk about statistics. Look at how many car accidents there are every single day. Some of them are minor. Some of them are tragic. Most of those people, probably 99% of them, have driver's licenses. So what does that mean? It means nothing. It is a false sense of security, and that's what my article is going to be themed on, and I will let you know when that gets posted to the Capital News. But nothing exciting. A continuation of the same stuff. Handicapping it for the next one, who's likely to be there? Well, of course, Joe Biden will be there. Bernie Sanders will be there. Elizabeth Warren. Buttigieg, I'm sure, will still be there. Kamala Harris will probably still be there. And Cory Booker. Will Beto O'Rourke make it? We'll see. Former Secretary Castro, who was in the Obama administration, he was on the fringe. Will he be back? I doubt it. I really don't like this guy. I don't want to see him again. But that's not up to me. We'll see what the Democrats want, if they want him back on there. He went after Joe Biden today pretty personally. And these guys served under the same administration. And I believe there was a lot of pushback. I was watching some of the follow-up on CNN. This was an ABC debate, but I was watching CNN afterwards to see some of the commentary on that. And a lot of those pundits, which are heavily, Democratic Party, did not like the fact that Secretary Castro went after Joe Biden. It was personal. He probably didn't have to go that low, pretty much calling out Joe Biden's memory and sort of meandering, so I don't know if it was an attack on his age and qualifications. But, this is politics. This is presidential politics. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. But when the main theme of tonight's debate from most of the candidates on the stage was unity, that was quite the differentiation right there, with Secretary Castro going after Vice President Biden. So we'll see what happens. We got a long way to go. It's November of 2020. It's like an eternity. Believe me, we're going to have more debates. There's going to be more nonsense thrown around. It's par for the course. Like I said, it's going to be interesting. It's going to give me a topic to discuss here with you guys on the podcast for the next, 15 months or whatever it is. It's going to get exciting. We have a lot of things coming to a head. And it's not just in this country. It's a lot of things out of Europe, a lot of things out of Asia, the Middle East, South America. I mean, it's all over the place. Like we talked about the other day on a previous podcast, pick a country, any country, and the United States is no exception. These are interesting times to be alive. We got a lot of problems. Unfortunately, we lack the leadership in knowing how to solve them. Nobody's talking about the Federal Reserve. Nobody's talking about the national debt. Nobody's talking about how to pay for any of this stuff. That goes for the Democrats and the current incumbent at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So it's all a shame, but I'm staying focused. That's what we do here at the Capital News, and hopefully it's to everybody's betterment, because we have to raise the discussion. and we got to start solving the problems. So stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.